Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last session of the conference. Thank you for making it here with us.
It's great to be here.
And I really appreciate you all taking the time to join our session today. We will be talking about a brand new feature in Power BI called Explore, which is a new way to explore your data right within Power BI and Fabric. So we just want to introduce ourselves for those of you that may not know us. I'm Rosie Levister. I'm a principal product manager on the Power BI team. And my colleague?
I'm Patrick Kowalski. I'm engineering manager working on Power BI.
Awesome. So just to set some context before we get started, I want to kind of explain the differences between what we mean by data exploration as opposed to data reporting. So data exploration is more about the analyzing the data action itself with potentially the intent to uncover an insight or to just spend some time increasing your familiarity with a data set or semantic model that's been sent to you by someone else. So that could include saving and sharing those insights, but it's not always required. It might be more on an ad hoc basis. Versus data reporting is building a data presentation with the intent to distribute and share it with others. So I just want to set that context of when we talk about what Data Explore means in relation to data reporting. All right, so then who is this feature for? So there we have sort of this myriad of personas, if you've heard them across the conference. The product team also loves to use this sort of persona and jobs to be done model. So when we think about the business end user, what are the typical things that they are doing? They are looking at the report that an analyst has built for them to try to understand, what is the data story that the report is telling, and looking for insights. They have questions about actually what's presented into the report, right? And they also want to be able to share what they've learned and what insights they're finding with other stakeholders, with other colleagues. And they use these insights to then make a business decision or a data-driven decision. Over on the other side are the analysts. These are the folks that are actually building the reports, and they're spending their time gathering and preparing the data to be consumed, and they're building a data story in the form of a report for an audience. And this is meant to typically be a durable thing that you come back to, and it becomes sort of a single source of truth. And that's shared with the business end users and other stakeholders, as well as they are also in the process of building insights and making a decision as well. So somewhere in between these two sits our main target persona, which is the Insights Explorer. And so these are the folks that want to dig a little bit deeper, more than just what a business user tends to consume just from a report, and wants to analyze the data itself. So maybe they're trying to figure out, is this the correct data set that I need to work with? Or maybe they have something in addition to what's not presented in the report they have a question about. So they may export this data and analyze it in Excel. They may filter it further. So these folks kind of sit in between these two personas. And you may be wearing different hats at different times. Maybe you're an analyst on one report, but you end up being an Insights Explorer on another. So if we take a look at what we currently have today to solve the needs of an Insights Explorer, what are the current exploration features we have in Power BI? So we have, of course, filtering, where you can filter to basically see a subset of your data. We have Analyze in Excel, which is for those users that do want to do a little bit more digging. They tend to export that data and bring it into Excel where they're more familiar. Maybe they then combine it with new data in addition to what they've exported. You can also drill up and drill down. This is typically when you're working with a hierarchy and you want to look at maybe what is a root cause analysis. There's also drill through, which if your report author or your analyst has created this for you, you can also use drill through to kind of explore more details in another page. Of course, we have Q&A, which helps answer your data questions in a natural language way. And we also have this personalized visual feature, which again, if your report author or analyst has set this up for you, from a business user's perspective, they can also use personalize to kind of customize a visual to meet their needs in the context of the report. So when we think about all of these different features, one of the issues that starts to happen is that all of these things not only take a dependency on the report author to set up, but they're also very all over the place. They're not really in one centralized place where you can do all of these things together. So it begins to feel like you're trying to solve a mystery, you know, when you think about all of these disparate features. So one of the common problems that we're hoping to solve with Explore is not only are these individual experiences a bit clunky and cumbersome to use and to set up, but they're also very disjointed and they lack that fluidity to have in one space. It also forces users to go down the reporting path. So if you have a quick question that isn't presented in that report, then you're kind of stuck. You're kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to build a report because I need to get my question answered. So this is why we want to introduce you to the brand new experience called Explore. So we've built this in a way that can be more focused and approachable for those end users and for those insight explorers to be able to explore their data directly within Power BI without the need to take it out and export to Excel, and also have it be a more user-friendly experience than having to go down the complex and full heavyweight reporting path. So let's take a tour of the new experience. So where to start? So we want this to be available to you wherever you have data. And currently, we're in a preview, so we're limited with where we have our entry points today. But it's already available on when you're viewing a report. It's right up the top there in the command bar. It's also available directly from a semantic model that you can find in the Data Hub. And it's also available from a semantic model or report within the workspace list. And if you're in a data mart using a SQL query, you can also use this quickly to explore and visualize your query result. And so we are planning to expand this even further into the rest of Fabric as well. So basically the way to think about it is you should be able to explore wherever you have data. So over on the right side here is the data pane, which for most report authors, this should feel very familiar. This is the same fields list that you're familiar with from the reporting experience. And we also have the option down below to rearrange the data that you've added. So you're going to start off with a matrix, which is kind of a what our version of a pivot table is. So if you're exporting your data to Excel, you typically start with a pivot table. So that is why we start you off with a matrix here. And then down below with the rearranged data, you can then move your fields around, like do you want it to show in a column or a row? And then if you're working with the visual section down below, the rearranged data section will also show you what field wells are applicable to that visual type. So to give you a bigger picture of how this looks, so when you're working in the exploration space or with a canvas, as you're updating either the matrix or the visual below, these are going to update in tandem. So if you sort one or you change out a field, these will also show the same set of data, just visualized in different ways. You can also change the view. If you prefer to see more of the visual, you can also just expand the visual section, or if the visual type you're working with would look better or easier to read, you can also switch to more of a vertical view using the view switcher up at the top right. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about our filters experience. So you'll notice this is very different from the report experience. And that is for the reason that in a report experience, we have the filter pane. And the filter pane has multiple levels of filters, right? You have your visual level filters, your page level filters, and your report level filters. And because in the Explore experience, not only are we trying to make it simpler to use, but you're only working with a single matrix and visual pair, right? They update in tandem. So we could simplify the filters experience to be more familiar to what you may have seen in other products, to also be focused on just the visual level filters. So that is why it kind of shows up on the top here as a filter pill, which also makes it easy to update and remove or change out. And the card itself, which is the expanded section, also looks a bit different. And that is an effort to address some of the accessibility issues we have, but also to make it a bit more readable as you're kind of setting your filter. And we'll see that in the demo. So coming soon, we are also adding undo and redo, as well as an option to reset all changes. So again, this is meant to be more of an ad hoc type of experience. But if you happen to have saved this, you can also use the reset all changes to kind of go back to your last saved state. And we've also added a clear all option, which is, again, if you think about this as a ad hoc scratch pad whiteboarding space, this is really easy to wipe what you have, start over, go down your next rabbit hole, data thought, thing that you want to explore. And this would not be a Microsoft session without mentioning Copilot. So we are also adding a Copilot experience to Explore, which this is in an effort to kind of help you with that first bit where you're maybe trying to figure out, is this the right data for me? Where should I even start? What's interesting in this semantic model? So we're adding this data overview feature, which gives you kind of a gist of what you're working with to ensure you're working with the correct semantic model and give you some inspiration on where you can begin your exploration. The question is it more to prompt, can you repeat that again? It's just so I don't,
Is it more about creating a prompt that allows you to explore the data, fill the matrix, or is it more a prompt to explain what I'm looking at or provide insights about what I'm looking at?
Right, okay, so the question is it more about to prompt building the matrix or visual, or is it more about to explain the data you're starting with? So it can be used at any point in your exploration, but we typically want to give you something to start with. So that was the goal there, was to give you some insights, but you can always go back and look at, like, okay, actually it called out, total sales amount here. I've explored that to a level, and now I want to go back and look at, the date range, for example. So it's sort of a durable option for you throughout your journey. All right, and then in the case that you actually do want to save what you've explored, we also offer the option to save and share this as a brand new Fabric artifact. And you can also save it as a report. So let's say you want to use Explore as sort of that whiteboarding experience and then use it as a way to launch into building your report. So you can also save it as a report as well. All right, and then I just want to give some caveats about this being a preview feature and also a brand new Fabric artifact, and highlight that before I hand it over to my colleague for the more exciting bit. But some limitations that we currently have. So creating an exploration, so launching this new experience, is currently limited to users that have build permissions on the underlying data. And if you're trying to save the exploration, it must be, you must have a contributor role in the workspace that you're saving to. To save an exploration requires a Fabric license, and this is currently a limitation, unfortunately, with a Fabric artifact, is that it also needs to be saved to a premium workspace. However, for both of these top two lines, we are looking at how best we can lift these restrictions to make this truly more pervasive for users, because we understand the Insights Explorer does not maybe fit into these categories. The third line here, to be able to share an exploration, of course, you need a pro or premium license. That's just our typical share restriction. And then to view the exploration after you have actually shared it, saved it, you need at least read permissions on the underlying semantic model. So the recipient needs to have at least read permissions to be able to see the data. Oh, all right. Go ahead.
This is just a question for me. Could you just clarify, when you say you need to be able to save to a premium workspace, is an F SKU a premium, or are you just talking P SKUs as a premium workspace? So the second line down, to save an exploration requires saving to premium workspace. Are you including Fabric-enabled workspaces?
Yes, so Fabric and P, yep. All right. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to my good friend Patrick to show you a live demo and putting it all together.
Well, so let's start with that. We'll tell you a little bit about that. So I will start from the report. I was looking for good data set or semantic model to start with, and I thought, like, Friday, Saturday evening, I'm probably the last speaker between this place, hopefully a bar or nicer place to be. So I found this organization who's really collecting data about brewing industry in Europe. So all of that is the real data. There are some missing pieces, but that's all I got from them. It's a reference here. So let's say someone prepared this report for me, and they were so nice, they put Q&A, so I can ask questions like what country has the highest beer consumption per capita, and surprise, surprise, it's Czech Republic. I can see some data about beer production. It's fairly simple, right? Like, we have number of breweries, we have production per country in thousands of hectoliters, we have direct employment. We also have, like, the aggregated average production in Europe. We have some interesting things, like, in 2020 something happened and we didn't produce as usual. We also have consumption data. Surprisingly, 2020 also was a weird year. If you don't remember, we apparently not only stopped producing that much beer, we also stopped drinking that, at least in Europe. And I have some, they put some data about, like, import, export, but, I look here and there are some interesting observations, but I really want to go deeper. I want to know what's the relation between production and consumption. And, I could, of course, ask my analysts to add a page to the report and wait for them until they have time. Or I can use one of our entry points, which is explore this data. You have it on every single report page. And as long as you have permission, you can do that. So as Rosie presented in her slide deck, right? Like, we have Explore Canvas, which by default show us empty space with data pane. We actually can start with data overview. I kind of know what's in this data because we started from the report. Can use Copilot. Spoiler, that was very quick because we cached this data. I can refresh it for you. It will take a while, but what you can see here are actual numbers, not made up by OpenAI. It was actually quite tricky to build because OpenAI is great to summarize things and produce narrative. It is not great with math, and it's definitely not great with data. And for us, like, privacy is the thing, as you know. So we are using insights from the actual semantic model data set and combine as kind of like hybrid approach. But we can see it's like, it's data between 2010 and 2022, 31 countries, number of breweries. Interesting thing for me that was surprised, it's a big labor market. It's more than 1.5 million people in Europe directly employed by brewing industry. I feel better drinking beer. So to give you the actual experience of getting that from OpenAI, combining with our insights, it's not the same as if you notice. It's a little bit different structure here, different tags, but and we actually have some issues here. We formatted that with percentage and added percentage to that. Sorry for it, it's not perfect, it's still preview. But I'm honest, I haven't seen that before. So that's where we start, right? And we want customers to get to the product and start there. But returning to my idea, I really wanted to see consumption versus production over years. So I will start with years. And you will see we started filling the matrix. So our idea initially was like a lot of customers are asking for this data in Excel, or just opening that in Excel and go pivot tables. That's why matrix here. So I have years. I have beer production. I have beer consumption. Oh, it's per capita, so this is not what I wanted. Count is really helpful, and I also can make it a little bit bigger. So now I have production numbers, consumption numbers, no countries, which is fine. I will switch to visual, because it's actually a little bit nicer for me to work with this data in a visual manner than with the matrix. We have auto visual here, so we automatically selected like line chart based on what data is in matrix. We will have time probably, so I can show you how we sometimes do really decent job and sometimes do really funny job, automatically selecting that, but that's not the point. I will switch the auto visual for now, and to be fair, this is great view, but I actually prefer this view, and since I'm working with visual only, I will do here. And first thing I'm seeing is like, this data is off. There's no way it's the same data and was different than the report, and oh, I know why, because I have sum of production and average of consumption. So let's try to compare apples to apples and switch to sum. Now it makes more sense. It's still interesting because European countries are producing more beer than they consuming. And not everything they consume, spoiler from data I learned, not everything that you consume in Europe comes from Europe. There's still import from outside Europe in general, including UK, which I wasn't able really to find good data showing like, well, and Brexit happened. So the only point here is COVID. Yeah. So we have this. It's kind of like interesting. I want to see countries here. But before we get to countries, I actually think I noticed this employment number was really interesting to me, so I want to see employees. But because this is line chart, I can use secondary axis, and it's just like, drag and drop. So the visual, of course, has like two scales. One is for thousands of hectoliters here. The other one is for thousands of employee average. Does that make more sense to have some? Probably not. Well, actually it doesn't really matter that much, but let's stick to average. What I want to show you is the other thing with more related with filters. So what I can do now, I can add countries, and the one thing I really like about the line chart is we have small multiples, which works very well. If I add it here, right away I have this. It's still single visual, but it's like 31 visuals in one, right? But this is still like, well, way too high level. What I'm interested in is to see data for top 4 producers. And top 4 because, well, we have 4 charts visible all the time. So I think that will be quite handy. Let's take production, drag and drop here. Now, it shows all. But what we've done here, we have like different filtering type, right? Like we can use advanced filter, which gives us different conditions. It's like, sure. We can use basic filter, which is just like, list of checkboxes. But here, like really, the one which really I really like is this. Like I want top 4 based on some, actually, but I want top 4. This is wrong filter. I want to filter countries. It's super easy to change that, right? Again, top N 4. And now I want to take sum of production and apply. And then we know, like, who are the biggest producers. Spoiler alert, those are also biggest consumers in terms of market as a whole. So there's no Czech Republic here. They drink a lot of beer per person. But if you look here, it's actually very interesting data, right? Like you look at the scale, and Germany both produces and consumes like double of next two, which are like Poland and Spain, surprisingly. Yeah, so that's how we can do that. It's kind of weird with data because this looks like it's incomplete. So I can do another quick trick and just add years here. And then instead of all years, just remove 2023. Well, data for UK is still incomplete, but it's still better. So I can see, like, indeed, like, there are some interesting trends in Germany and Poland, quite similar in production and consumption. And UK, well, Spain is like they had a dip, but they recovered. What's also was very interesting, like I look at Poland, like if you don't know, I'm Polish. I originate from that country, so always look at that. They've done some improvements probably in production process around 2014, 2015, or changed the way how they hire people because the production is growing, consumption is growing, and employment is actually much lower than it used to be. Interesting insight. Anyway, I don't want to talk about beer too long, but I hope like you see where we go with that, right? It's an offering for people who have like relatively high data literacy. I think they can comprehend data, they can understand model. There are limitations. We don't offer great insights into the model. So one question we got before was like, well, is data overview, what's the reason for that, right? It's kind of to show you what's there. We don't have right now a good way to show you relations. So you are kind of sentenced to believe that the author of the model did decent job or half-decent job to enable you to explore this a little bit better, right? So that's one thing. But the other thing, like you can see here, it's a pop-up. It's not full screen experience, right? So Rosie was talking about saving and sharing. You can also see open a new tab. Again, to either share or open a new tab, you need to save. And I will talk a little bit about that because, of course, we can just save and or save as a report. I will save it as the artifact. We have some default name, which I will just make shorter. There is a workspace, as we mentioned before, right? Workspace needs to be Fabric enabled. Also, just for full transparency, to use data overview, you need to have Fabric capacity. Like, you need to be essentially Copilot user. And there's sensitivity label because it's shareable. So, we have the same sensitivity permission model as entire fabric. I can make it, well, I can actually make it non-business because it's definitely not business report. So now I can, it's saved, I can open that in a new tab. Do we have any questions now? Yeah.
So just a quick question on that sensitivity label. If there is actually a sensitivity label in the model, will I be able to change that? Will I be able to make it higher or lower?
So the question was if we can change the sensitivity label higher or lower comparing to semantic model. To be honest, I think we can make it more restrictive for sure.
Yep.
I'm not quite sure if we can make it less restrictive. You still have to access data, so yeah, I need to check and get back to you.
No, that's good. That'll be good to do. Yeah.
Now, a few things. This is, you can say like, well, we were looking at a visual, and now we see matrix again. That's something we are working on. It will come, I want to say very soon, but very soon in our case, it's like we will be ready with implementation in about 2 weeks. So it will reach production in about, whatever, 6 weeks or something like that. Yeah, so today when we save, we don't save the state of the report, oh, sorry, of the exploration experience. We always reset to matrix, which I kind of like, you know, weird, but we preserve filters. We should, and they are here. That's a bug.
Yep.
It's a preview. We launch MVP. Yeah, and the filter actually is there. We just didn't render it for whatever reason that I will figure out why. And again, like, you know, we can return to that. We can also, well, I can't do undo because I just open it. And undo relates to what we did with data or, you know, fields. It doesn't really apply to the layout of the exploration canvas. But I can do this. I can just nuke it, and it's gone. Not really gone, because I can revert to the previous state. So that's one thing. You also can see here editing and viewing. Again, something that you are probably very familiar with reports. When you share them, you can share them as view only, and we can do the same thing here. Yeah, it's same like, you know, every piece of Microsoft M365, how we call Office now. Yeah, so yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, and then the last thing I want to talk about, we can, if you want to see other stuff, we can do that. But I wanted to go to the workspace. We'll save it. It asks me if I want to save it. So you remember I had this, this is my kind of like personal demo test kind of workspace with a lot of interesting data sets or semantic models. But here you see like 3 items, right? One is the report that we started with. There is semantic model, of course, and there is the actual artifact with these icons. So whenever you see binoculars, that's Explore. We want to do that, and it's actually a Fabric artifact. I think I can share that.
Yep.
It's the first time when Fabric started. It wasn't even public. We started work on it. It's like, well, a report, but it's not really replacement for report. We want people to maybe use it as a jump start to working on reports. So we figure out that we will build this as a Fabric artifact. It's actually the very first second party, let's call it like that, Fabric artifact we built within Microsoft, yeah, which gives us a lot of good stuff with Fabric. Yeah. And also when you look at like semantic model, It's like, you have lineage, you have like everything. And again, you can explore data from semantic model from scratch. Yeah, that would be it in terms of my demo. And we have time, apparently a lot of time, for questions.
Sure. Yeah, we could just hop back to the slides real quick.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. All right, so for more information, since this is a brand new feature, of course, we have a blog post that went out in November, and I believe these slides will be shared with you after the conference, so of course you can check that out. And then we also have a full documentation page, also including information about what we spoke about today, and of course more information as we continue to ship more features. We also have this QR code as well as the aka.ms link here for after you've used the experience. We want to hear from you. What were you missing? What were things that didn't work for you? What are the things that you want Explorer to be able to do for you? And so we have this sort of post-experience survey where we're collecting feedback so that we can continue to improve and continue to build this out.
And of course, if you like the presentation, give us feedback.
Yeah. So of course, we're going to end on this while we take questions. So go ahead and provide feedback on our session.
Not really a question, but yeah, you said you're addressing the top 2 challenges at the moment. So as a customer, I'm very happy because I was really stumped by the fact that I was a pro user. I tried to save the report and it said, no, you need to have premium capacity. And I'm like, what is going on here? So I'm happy to see that it is a public preview and that you're looking into these kind of issues. So thanks.
Yeah. There should not be a restriction on saving as a report, but there is a restriction on saving it as an exploration. But we appreciate you giving this feature already a great try, and of course, we want to hear more feedback on that.
Good.
Thank you.
Just give it a couple minutes as the stream's a minute or 2 behind. So.
No worries.
We're really happy to answer your questions.
Or you can argue with Patrick about which country has the most beer consumption, if that's actually true.
Well, according to the source that I used, we have solid data.
Which was your data source? That is the next question.
Well, so let's return to the report, right? Yeah, you should be able to see that if I open report.
We need to independently verify that.
I don't think so. Well, so it's not necessarily fully accidental choice of the subject. I am actually brewing beer myself. I don't drink that much, but it's a pleasure to do that. And well, I'm tangentially in this data. Because I lived for years on the other side of the big pond. Well, it's very clear, per capita, Czechia, Austria, and then Germany and Poland. And you can see it's with production. It's just part of Czech culture. They have a lot of good beer.
I don't have a question either, but I've used this a little bit already.
Awesome.
Since the announcement that it came out, I sort of went in and played around, and I do think it fills a really, really kind of needy gap. I couldn't have said previously that I needed it, but now it's there. It immediately clicked for me as a kind of, oh yeah, I can see where that fits in workflows for me and also for slightly more business side colleagues. So I do think it's got a lot of mileage. It's really awesome.
We really appreciate that, and we have bigger roadmap for this experience, which is kind of tricky because we want to keep it as simple as possible to make sure that it's not another tool for niche amount of people. But also we found that even with user research, that for people with, in theory, like relatively high data literacy, there is still a barrier. So, I think I can say that there will be a day when Copilot will come to this experience. That's not a surprise. Yeah, there will be more improvements to that to make it simpler and just better.
I was just wondering, you're also working on making sure that the experience here is similar to, say, Excel, and the explore function that's being added, or insert table function that's being added within Excel?
So this is, hopefully the question was, can you repeat the question then?
Sorry.
Yeah.
A bit louder, okay. Sorry, I was wondering if you were making sure that this experience we're seeing here is similar within Excel.
Yep.
So the user sees the same interface or can achieve the same result?
Yeah, so that is the hope. So the question was if this is going to feel very similar to the experience of pivot tables in Excel. So we are addressing some of those gaps already, but of course, this is where we want to go. I think the hope is to keep you within Power BI, within Fabric, instead of needing that extra step to export it to Excel. So we are looking at what are the most important things that would help with data exploration that are coming from the Excel world that you find you need to leave to be able to bring it into Explore. All right. Well, I guess we'll end a bit early, but of course, feel free to find us around if you're still around for additional questions, feedback, anything that comes to mind. Thank you again.
Thank you.